go, this Friday edition of the Jerry Doyle Show. This is my Friday, your Thursday, but we're combining the two into Friday because tonight I'm taking a red-eye to New York City for my mama's 85th birthday party. I told her not to listen to the show today, as opposed to the days when she doesn't anyway, because she doesn't like what I have to say. You can't listen to the show today, Mom, because I'm going to beat up on those evil Democrats. I'm going to tell everybody in your state of New Jersey what a great guy Chris Christie is and how he got the keynote address at the Republican convention. I'm not listening to you today. I just gave her an excuse to not have to listen. So she's not listening. So she doesn't know I'm flying in, but I'm going to surprise her. Is that a good idea at 85? Surprise your mom.
Don't
surprise!
Yeah, well, don't be hiding behind the bed and pop up when she comes in.
That would be creepier than the creepiness that it sounds there. Anyway, so seeing as how I had a lot of stuff ready for the Friday edition of the program, but it's only Thursday, so we're going to have to give you the Chris Berman of talk radio. The fastest 3 minutes for Chris on TV with regard to halftime at the halftime of the football games. I'm going to have to give you the fastest 3 hours of radio here. The Chris Berman of radio. JD, your 643 ATM of Informacion. Marcelo working the dials. Brad producing the program. Emails at the website, jerrydoyle.com. Poll question up there for you today. And the results of this are a little surprising to me. Perhaps you can help me figure it out as we go along. Politicians on both sides of the aisle are calling on Romney to release his tax returns. Yet when McClatchy News asked all 535 House and Senate members to release theirs, only 17 did. 40% of you said it should be an individual decision. 2% say release the returns of those in leadership positions. 7% say it should be up to the voters in each of the districts and or states. And 51% say release them all. What's there to hide? Don't hide your answer there at the website or here at 800-876-4123 on the program where intellectual anarchy is encouraged and nurtured for now. 40%. It should be an individual decision. Is that because people can't separate self from politics? Where there's something where people maybe feel that this is an intrusion or would be an intrusion on them to have their tax returns released? But yet we're not talking about you. We're talking about crooked politicians. Not all of them, most of them. But we're talking about how it is they make their money. And how is it that they make relatively such little amount of money? I say $175,000 a year is a little amount of money relative to the amount of time, energy, and effort they actually do have to put into supposedly representing their district, but more so representing the special interest in Washington, D.C. You have to have a house in the district or the state. You have to have a place to live in Washington, D.C. You have to fly back and forth to your district on a fairly regular basis. And you have to be able to fit in all those breakfast, lunches, and dinners with all the high-paid lobbyists that are trying to figure out how to bribe you to get you to do what it is that they want you to do. It's not easy. It's not easy for them to do. But I look at this question more from the standpoint of hypocrisy than I do about disclosure and accountability. Everybody wants Romney to release his tax returns. Republicans and Democrats alike. I say everyone, I'm over-speaking there, but you get the point. Republicans and Democrats, pundits on Fox and MSNBC and CNN all saying just release your tax returns. Prominent voices in the Republican parties, release your tax returns. Because it just gives the assumption that you're hiding something. And if you've got nothing to hide, release the returns. So McClatchy newspapers decide they're going to take that and run with it. So they sent requests over the last 3 months to all 535 members of the House and Senate to release their tax records. 17 did. 3%. Handed over the documents. 19% said they wouldn't release them under any circumstances. And the remainder didn't even bother to respond. Now, members of the executive branch are expected to release their tax records when they're running for office or a vetting process for a congressional or cabinet appointment. Members of Congress aren't held to the same standard. Democrats, more so than Republicans, have called for Mitt Romney to release their tax returns. More than 2 years of tax returns at a minimum. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi, Senate Majority Leader whorehouse Harry Reid have both suggested Romney is trying to hide something. Yesterday, Representative Sandra Levin, the Democrat from Michigan, introduced legislation requiring presidential candidates to release 10 years of tax returns. Senator Dick, appropriately named Durbin, the Democrat from Illinois, introduced a similar bill in the Senate earlier this year. And in explaining to McClatchy why they wouldn't hand over their tax returns, some members attacked McClatchy newspapers. According to Representative Gary Ackerman, the dim bulb from New York, he said, first, your publishers and editors and executives should publish their tax returns. They have great influence over public policy. Are you guys asking the president to turn over his college records? Said Representative Jeff Duncan, the Republican from South Carolina. Or are you asking him to turn anything over of any kind, he asked? With no response. I love the way they do this. Oh, so McClatchy asks the House and the Senate to turn over their tax returns. The House and Senate members turn on McClatchy and say, you hand yours over first. No, you. No, you. No, you do it first. No, you. I said it first. Get Mikey. Right. This hero. I don't want it. I don't want it. Let Mikey try it. Mikey, he likes it. You're talking about people, folks, who come to Washington, D.C., many of them poor by the standards that they leave relative to. They come in making $175,000 a year. They can be there for a few years, and they leave multimillionaires. Don't you think we should know what it is that's in their tax returns, that how it is that they got so rich so quick when everyone else is relatively so much poorer relative to where the financial bubble started bursting back in 2008? I want to know. Because I think if you follow the money of where Congress is making its money, you'll get a pretty good indication of why it is what's being done is done and why what should be done isn't getting done. But what is getting done is they're getting reelected and they're getting richer, and I think we should have a wealth of knowledge as to how it is that they're always managing to be so right, outperforming the returns of the S&P 500. They're better stock pickers than stock pickers. They're better at picking winners and losers in their own portfolio, but not so much when it comes to picking winners and losers with regard to taxpayers' dollars. I was talking to a very disenfranchised liberal New York Democrat this morning. He's a lawyer. And he said, you know, the whole system is just so ridiculously rigged and corrupt. Now, he was a guy who would always say the Republicans are corrupt. The Democrats are as pure as the driven snow. If you've ever seen the driven snow in New York City, not very pure. Kind of dirty. But he would always staunchly defend his side of the aisle. And now he's like, you know what? We're all getting hosed because they're getting wealthier. And he said, well, how about this? And considering the fact that they have to travel to and from the district, maybe on Fridays and Mondays, they have to legislate Tuesday through Thursday, they have to meet with constituents in the district, they have to go to the keto lunches and the pancake breakfast, and they have to go to the potluck suppers on Saturdays, and they have to be at every public event in their district or their state, every high-profile meeting, because if they're not there, someone would say, where was Congressman so-and-so? He doesn't care about XYZ, you fill in the blank. So it's almost as if they're compelled to be there. Now, what if we take up my New York lawyer Democrat proposal this morning? We pay congressmen and women $1 million a year. We buy them a house, the federal government, we the taxpayer, the federal government buys them a house in the district that they live in, or the state, in the case of the Senate, that they live in. And then back in Washington, D.C., we have kind of like a dorm-style setting. Now, for the people who are married and have children, maybe what we do is we give them some type of a credit or an allowance against that housing so they can go out and get whatever it is that they want. They do it in the military. You go to Edwards and Ellis, there's housing on the base. And if you choose that you want to do something else, that's on you. But at least then, they don't have to worry about maintaining two residences. They don't have to worry about figuring out an extra way or angle to make a little bit more money because they feel they're underpaid at $175,000 a year. But in return for that, I mean, what are we talking, $535 million a year to pay Congress? That's not a lot of money relative to the amount of money that they're in control of and abusing along the way. But for that $1 million a year, any investments that they have to be turned over to a blind trust. They can't call the broker. They can't make trades. The money goes into a blind trust like Jimmy Carter did. And it was fitting that Jimmy Carter's portfolio looked worse when he left the presidency, much like the country did when he left the presidency. But they can't take a dime from any special interest group. from any lobbyist, from any key bundler, influencer, or big dollar donor. They simply have to do their jobs, and they're all getting paid the same at $1 million a year. Because then they're not going to be susceptible, or at least as exposed to the corruptibility of the current political system. I think there's something to that. Now, obviously, I can hear the people wonder, oh, are we going towards public financing? I'm not talking about going towards public financing. I'm talking about disincentivizing our members of Congress from catering to special interest simply to pad their pockets or to increase the amount of power and relevance that they have on Capitol Hill. Because the lobbyists would have to educate them the same way we have to educate ourselves about the issues. They would have to do their homework. And if they're not busy insider trading and going to breakfast, lunches, and dinners with lobbyists and key donors, maybe they'd have a little bit more time to sit in that government-paid-for house and do a little research on what it is they're voting on. Little things like Solyndra, Harmonix, and other solar companies that have gone bankrupt. And maybe they would take the time to actually look at what these companies do and who the competition is and where the money's coming from and what the future of the industry might be. And then maybe we wouldn't have the kind of boondoggles that we've seen with yet another solar company going bust. Now, with regard to that, maybe Congress would take the time to read, like people should, that it's not just Obama who's taking taxpayer funds and funneling to these solar companies that are going bankrupt, because that's the headline today from the Republican National Committee, from the NRCC, and from Breitbart, and from Fox, and from all the typical Republican cheerleader outfits, that yet another solar company, an Obama-like Solyndra company, has gone bust. The only problem is it was initially funded by George Bush.
No.
That's not going to get me on Fox News. Speaking of, today, Congress is voting on the No More Solyndras Act. No more Solyndras. That makes sense, right? No, not according to key Republicans. Key Republicans like Joe Barton and Michael Burgess of Texas and Phil Gingrey of Georgia, who said, don't think we need to throw the whole program out. We don't need to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But when you take a look at the $47 billion that has been funded since March of 2009, half of the companies that have received loan guarantees have gone bankrupt. Might want to rethink the program and the funding, and maybe a little bit more time spent doing some research in your government-paid-for home on your $1 million salary might allow you to do that.
The Jerry Doyle Show.
I'm just saying. Is $1 million a year enough? Is that too little? Is that too much? What's the Goldilocks amount where it's just right to pay these corrupt and connected crony politicians? 800-876-4123 is the number. Damon Root from Reason is going to join us. Kurt Loder is going to review The Dark Knight Rises, and Tim Carney from the Washington Examiner about Obama crony capitalism and how Mitt Romney promises to clean it up. But how's he going to do it if he doesn't tell people how he's going to do it? Stick with us.
This is the Jerry Doyle Show.